Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to Jazz Chats with Cool Cats, a virtual conversation concert series featuring esteemed drummer and host, KCH favorite and yours, Pete Siers. This series has been generously funded by seasoned underwriter, Bank of Ann Arbor. This presentation is free, but please consider supporting our world-class artists and our Kerrytown Concert House by making your own gift at kerrytownconcerthouse.com/donate. Enjoy the program.
Welcome, everybody, and we are here with our very special guest today for Jazz Chats with, I'm going to say, the coolest cat right here. This is Don Chisholm on his turf in his own office. So kudos to Kerrytown Concert House and, of course, the staff here that we have been able to do a remote program for you today. And anybody that has ever seen jazz and knows how the nuts and bolts work with jazz in Ann Arbor and this whole area know the name Don Chisholm. And I want to welcome you, Don, to this little program. And it is just my honor and pleasure to share the space and the room with you, because I personally have been just a recipient of your generosity and your great listening ability, and you're coming out to the gigs I'm on, and this goes on and on for years.
Yeah, you and Paul and Ellen played jazz for the opening of Stonebridge, and
right.
Every week.
That's right.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah. So I am really grateful that we can spend a little time in this having a chat, talking about your life and your great philanthropy in the arts and keeping the music and the theater and all of the creative people vital here in Ann Arbor for years and years. So Don, let me just ask you a couple of questions about your early life, so we have a starting point here. So you've told me some stories about your mom as a pianist.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that?
Her dad was in the railroad business, and she ended up from Canada in Seattle, Washington. And I think started teaching piano there. And stayed there, and not long after that, one of her students turned out to be my dad. They got together, and she bought I think they were holding then. She bought a Steinway 1928 grand piano. We still have it, and in the books. That piano was in the guest apartment for all the people coming to town, and there were I just thumbed there about 8 or 9 saying, "Wow, what a great piano!" So that's one of the reasons I keep it.
Fantastic. And so she was teaching your father, and how was his playing ability? Was he a good pianist?
No. And he didn't pretend to be. And he was in various businesses. Very much in those days, it was automobiles, and he and his brother became auto salespeople and did very well. They were GM's hot shots and so forth. And my dad ended up shipping cedar fence posts all over the country, and his business card, and he didn't over-exaggerate on this, was Hugh Chisholm, world's largest shipper of fence posts. In northern Idaho, where he was from, my grandfather was from, all cedar in the mountains. And that the farmers would have it in the backyard, and just for extra money, they'd carve the fence posts, sell them for a pickup truck, and then about 2,400 posts went on a freight car, and they had kids load them, me being one of them, and you get a penny a post to load. And then they shipped them to Montana and all over. So I saw the business part.
So were you expected to play piano at all? Did you take lessons from your mom?
A little bit, but you don't pay too much attention to your mother. And I said, actually, one of the notables in Ann Arbor, said, "Well, how much did you play?" I said, "Well, I can tell you. I learned to play I'm Dreaming of a, and I never got to White Christmas." And he was in he says, "That was really good." And he was literature. But it was true.
As a youngster, did you get to see live music? Did your mom perform in public, or was it mostly just teaching? Or
I went with her to a lot of performances, and the good musicians will tell you what happens. They all have friends, and the friends say, "Why don't we have a party? Why don't I invite somebody that can play the piano?" And then they'll say, "Can I bring the kid?" "Yeah." Then they had free entertainment. That went on for years and years, all over.
Did your mom get to play with some heavy hitters back then?
No, she was, she went to the big school in New York. Juilliard, yeah. And knew the instructors and knew the people. And we'd go, when I'd go visit in San Francisco, she'd tell me who's there and who's no. If we go here, we can get 2 stops and so forth. Joe Savarino and I were partners for 25 years, and he got his master's in classical piano, and then he accompanied the Glee Club, and that was the first year the Glee Club entered the world competition, and Joe was their accompanist and soloist, and they won first time for U of M. And Joe was quite a partier, and he could play just like Errol Garner, and he had his all memorized, the 4 or 5 good, or they're all good, but the known ones. And we'd had parties where we'd put Errol Garner's record on, and then have Joe go down and play, or let people guess, and it was fun.
Nice. So, you went to Michigan Law School.
After I went to the undergrad and the business school and got a master's by using 12 credits of law school. So that was not, the law school bothered me. They were always, what if? And you could say, today is Tuesday, but let's think about this. They always got a part. So for my interest, that didn't hit it. The same thing happened with Sam Zell, who all these artworks they're actually music boxes, and Sam has been doing one a year I was with him on his board from a company he opened for 16 years, so I've got quite a collection of those things, and I'll show you.
So you went to work at OwensCorning for a bit?
Yeah, they interviewed at school, and I was in the market research. We just had one manager and 3 MBAs running around finding out how much plastic is in a railroad car or whatever, that kind of stuff.
And then from there you went to the Army.
Well, I was going to be drafted. And in those days, they were drafting everybody that reached 21 years old. And I got my notice. You have to report in 90 days. And one of the fellows I was working with, he says, it's possible to get direct commissions if you haven't been drafted yet. And you have to have an MBA and some experience. You've got both. Why don't you apply? I said, good idea. So I applied, and they had 3 officers come, and they asked me, how come you applied for the Medical Service Corps instead of the Ordnance or something else? And I said, well, that was the only one available that was 2 years instead of 3 years. And the colonel said, I admire your honesty. And I got in. And then we all trained at Fort Sam Houston. And then that school, and what we did for our staff, we can push-pull. If they saw one they wanted, they can pick them, and you don't get assigned somebody else. And one of my fun things is there were about 20 of us, mainly captains who were medical doctors of one sort, and a few of us non-talent people. And they have a master sergeant come and say, the first day, I'm going to teach you to march. You're going to start with your left foot. And he says, wait a second, is there anybody in this group who has prior military experience? And Heinrich was from Germany, and he says, yeah, but I was with the enemy. And he was a nice guy, and he was going to be a psychiatrist.
Oh, great stories, Don. Love this. Okay, so what happened after the Army? You have like marketing skills now, and that background.
Well, first of all, Betty was teaching up here, and we decided to get married on a leave, and then she came down, and we were invited to a party by the general who was running that whole base, and we were there as an unknowing second lieutenant, and she was standing next to me, and all of a sudden the general comes up, and she doesn't know a general from a private, and they were going to serve drinks, and all of a sudden they did, and she was just standing there, and the general looks at, would you like something? Oh, just a non-alcoholic. And he looked around, and normally they have a lot of, and he ran over and got it and brought it back. And of course the colonels and majors enjoying this, but he was a nice guy.
Right. Chivalry. Good thing.
Yeah. Right.
And so then you started in business here in Ann Arbor,
and I decided I wanted to be in business and real estate here on your own. And it turns out we joined Wendell Hobbs and his wife, Ruth, and we were right on Packard, near the athletic stuff, and near State Street. And we were there. We had about 6 or 7 guys in there, and it was a good office, good principals, and they were very nice people. And Bill Hobbs ended up doing a lot of Bill with Dick Black, a lot of our buildings. There, in fact, they moved in an office. We were on the first floor, they were on the second floor, and the architects spent a lot of time working at night. They all do. And there's a step with a landing going up to their office. And they'd come in at 10 o'clock to do something. And I said, how do you like it? He says, well, and there was a fellow on the neighborhood who was a bum, and he liked to drink. And he was often sleeping on the first level. And so Bill and they said, we know him, we like him, we just step over him, and that's the way it is.
So I read this line in this article that was written with you for the Observer sometime, and there was an interesting sentence in there about how you became to be a developer. Was in, you could start to see some failures in the housing market in regards to like student housing and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of led you into the path that you chose.
Yeah. When I was finishing my college, my master's, I had any class I could find from my hero. I'll come up with his name. He was chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors for 2 different presidents. And I did a paper for him about population and where it's going to go. And we took the Michigan Union as the center of Ann Arbor, when you include students. And everybody else was using Maine and Huron. And I said, so take a mile radius, and that would include all of State Street. Not all, but past the railroad tracks. And Carl Malcolm was a good friend. His mother owned about 5 acres on State Street, and she wanted to sell it. And Joe was an avid golfer, and he said, why don't we do a golf range there? So we did. We bought it and did. And then we didn't know what to do in the winter, so we met a fellow in the ski business. So it was tea and ski, and then we put a little rinky-dink ski, and it's only a 35-foot drop. But then the kids could come and learn there. And Betty ended up doing the clothing and the fashion stuff, and did the buying and the hiring. And so we kind of wiggled into the retail business, basically being real estate entrepreneurs.
Interesting. So it's at this point where you started to put some buildings up.
Yeah, it was a little one, but about 2,500 square feet, a ranch.
And that led to other things, though.
Yeah. Well, we started doing rental property. And the story was, if you could find an old house and pay and determine the lot size, and if it was 6,000 square feet of lot, it was probably either a single or an old 2-family. Well, 6,000 would permit, with all the regulations, a 6-unit building. If you tore it down, and we'd come up with the numbers that for a 6-unit building we could pay $18,000. Well, not many of the old houses were available for 18, but some were, because they were really. And we started doing some. And that's when when Sam Zell was a senior, he came into our office and he said, we want to manage your apartments. We had about 4. Big deal. And I said, well, why would we want you? You don't have any experience. Well, yes, my wife's dad is CPA and she's worked there, so she can do that. And I have an interest. And so we, okay. And I called him Chutzpah Boy because he's so go, go, go. And he did that, and he wrote a manual. And years later, they had a party for him in Chicago. And I said, why don't I distribute these manuals that were written by a beginner in college? And I've still got one. I think he'd pay a lot of money to have it.
So that was
that's where he started.
Yeah. And so what the next, like that whole boardwalk area, right? I mean, that was a big development.
Which one?
Like boardwalk.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was left over from we bought that 52 acres from a realtor who lived in one of those places. And we did things up by State Street, and then we put boardwalk in. And that's an interesting story. Joe always used to come over on Monday nights to our kitchen, and we'd have a drink and then talk to other people in the country about the Monday night football game and what was the line and which one we take. And that was called our business meeting on Mondays. And one Monday, they called from the city hall and they said, you know, your zoning is up tonight and you have to have a name for that street going down there. And my wife walked through the kitchen and what do they want? They wanted, well, you guys are always kidding around and fooling. Why don't you do a boardwalk? I said, we want boardwalk. That was it.
Fantastic. And that 777 building is right in that area?
Yeah, and that was Phil Spearman had contact. He was one of our partners with the big engineering firm in California. And they wanted to build an office just for their engineers for jobs in the Midwest. That's big time. 10 stories.
Yeah. And
then later, they wanted to sell it. I got involved in that too. And they used it very well. It was big, very competent, good company.
And the Wolverine Tower?
That was 3 fellows in Detroit who would build a couple like it, and they thought that would be right. And so we sold them. By then we had, with partners, because they would put up most of the money, and we'd put up a little. That was a 60-acre parcel, and it would be the corner, which was 14 acres. And they came and said, we want that corner because we think there'll be a shopping center across the street, and it's right access to I-94, and State Street will get better, we think. Never got much better. And they said, we want you guys to be partners. You can be 2% or something because you're here. And then we moved our office to the 10th floor, and we had great view for a while.
And then this building that we are in, the Burlington Building?
Yeah, there's 3 of them. And this was the second. No, this is the first one. No, one was first. This was the second, and then the third was on Main Street. We have a picture of Joe walking up the stairs there, and that was about 85. And he was suffering from cancer, and he died 5 days later. So I always remember that.
And of course, Stonebridge.
Yeah, that was, um, there again, it was Joe's golf interest. Um, and Bill Wiedemeyer went to Michigan State, and he knew Art Hills, who was a great golf architect. And when we met him, we decided, and we owned about 60 acres of 600 acres. And Don Cunningham was a good friend, and he did a very talented landscaper and a real character. Any building that was underway, I'd go out on Saturday morning, I'd see his car, and he'd have I'd go to the floor he'd be on, and he had a portable bridge chair he could fold up, and he'd sit there and look out the window. And I say, okay, Don, what is it? He says, well, we got to have evergreens here, and we got to have color over here, and then we got to have the view through to that little water pond. And he was doing everything visual and creating. He was painting, and then he'd go do it. And that's why the landscaping in our buildings was tribute to Don Cunningham. He was fabulous.
That's great. And of course, Sloan Plaza.
Yeah.
And very special name, the Sloan Plaza, right?
Yeah. And we got Hobbs and Black to do that. And they were very handy. They were right downtown. And we knew about it. Our accounting firm at that time was the local, and they were going to buy it. And they talked about it, and it had a car garage on it at the time. And I said it would be a good condo potential, because you can walk to campus, downtown, and it's next to the Campus Inn, which was already there. So we took a shot. And the architects did a very good job. And people liked it. And these testimonials of the people that have stayed there are really something. And they, first of all, I counted 8 that said the piano was a fabulous grand piano, and the unit was like a home away from home. Tamir Hendelman, who is now the great jazz, I think he's the #1, and he stayed there several times, and he says it's home away from home. And he was a member of the Jeff Hamilton Trio, which is the best trio in the world. I've been on 26 jazz cruises, and the last 21 was the Jeff Hamilton with Tamir featured. They have a lot of great pianists on that bill. It's quite an experience.
Yes, it is. Well, we have crossed the line from how you got to be where you are, and now
we always end up with music.
That's right. That's right, and that's as it should be.
Can't help
right?
it.
Okay, so moving along on this path now, I want to ask you some questions just out of the blue. And
Okay.
So Don, do you have a favorite record or several?
Oscar Peterson's
Do you have a favorite of those?
Canadiana Suite. They're just redoing, and in fact, somebody just the two great partners now are Jeff Hamilton, drummer, and his bass player. he just did a rearrangement of Canadian Suite, and it was on. They finished school at Indiana in 1974, and we went out. Judy Alcott heard them at a motel that went under on Jackson Road, and she told us, and we always played tennis with a group on Thursday nights, and then if there was music, we'd go to it. And we went out there, and there was nobody there, and in walked Monty Alexander, John Clayton, and Jeff Hamilton, and they were just, Jeff had just gotten out of, he was only a sophomore, and he had done so much good work in school that the faculty got with him and said, we can't do any more for you. You're already there. So they started traveling with Monty Alexander. That's one of the great, they're going to be on the jazz cruise this year. Reunion with the three of them featured. And they do one time a year in New York because it was classic.
And that, for me personally, is like one of my all-time great trios to hear Monty, Jeff, and Jeff.
Yeah.
John, Jeff. Yeah. Do you have a favorite song, Don?
No. A lot of them.
Sure.
I like several of Diana Krall's because the vocal puts it in a different sphere, which is very nice.
Yeah, I'm with you there. All right, I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Who's your favorite bass player?
Well, now it'd be John Clayton. And, we got him. We've been working with a music school on an ambassador program. And Ellen was very high on John, but I knew him from a different standpoint on the ships for 25 years. And he's just the prince of a guy. And he agreed to do it. He came the first year for a week, and the kids, they had a group of potential college freshmen interested in music. And John came in on a Sunday, and we had dinner, and he said, I want to get over and see the kids. They're going to be playing their instruments. And he walked in and listened to sax and the piano and the drum and so forth. And he says, well, I'll see you tomorrow morning, and I'm going to have a new song for, it'll have places for every one of you. And he wrote it that night. He's unbelievable. And he's now the band director of the Jazz Cruise. They've been through a bunch of people, but he is the ultimate leader of jazz big bands. And it turns out when they have a little trouble for one day or something, the next day you see Jeff Hamilton on drums and Tamir on piano and him on bass. They can be the guts of anything.
Do you have your most memorable concert that you could tell us about?
Yeah, I guess Joe and I used to go into concerts in Dearborn, and we took his nephew, Marty Edwards' son, John, and we went in, and they had the great guitar player, and the lights were off, and I should think of his name, but just a little guitar player. And then it was then the pianist, and then the bass. They just gradually made a quartet, and it was unbelievable.
Was it Joe Pass or?
Yeah, it was Joe Pass on
Oh,
guitar. Yeah,
yeah, fantastic.
yeah.
Let me ask you this one: does Betty listen to jazz?
No, she has to, but she likes country western, and she caused ripple in the jazz crews, jazz gang. Uh, we were going to do a birthday party, and I got Ray Brown. And first of all, how come we could get Ray Brown so much? I found out he loved to play golf, and his wife's sister lived on the east side of Detroit, and she wanted to come and see her sister. And he says, "Well, let's wait till it's spring." And and he'd call me 6:30 in the morning there. It'd be 9:30 here. He says, "Hey Don, can we play in golf in May 20th?" I said, "It's a pretty good chance for that." Okay, he would. Ron Brooks had the club at that. He says, "Call that guy. What's his name?" I said, "Ron Brooks. Call him and tell him I'm coming then." He didn't worry about it. He was in demand everywhere. So if he says he'll come, that was a big coup for Ron.
Right. Okay, let's talk about piano players. Who is your favorite piano player? Living or not?
Well, not would be Oscar Peterson. Now, I think Tamir Hindelman. He has been doing a series of Sunday night concerts. This is all Zoom, and then Tuesday, and from his house with only 2 people playing. He had John Clayton, he had Jeff Hamilton, so those are name deals. And then they'd always, every week, they pick, we're going to do a tribute to a certain composer, and he keeps going, and they're really good.
Yes.
It's an hour and a half deal.
Okay, Don, let me ask you about music and technology. So how do you listen to things these days? Are you using headphones, earbuds, or like digital downloading, any of that? How do you listen to music?
Well, I've finally done Zooming, and it's gone afoul a couple times. And it turns out Tamir uses, I think it's UCLI or USC, and it was their fault. We tracked it back, one of them, and I assumed it was mine, which is most likely. But then I used to make, of the records I had, I would do a tape every year, and then I'd get 40 of them made and send them as a Christmas.
Nice.
And I still got some, and a lot of people that got them said, "That's the kind of music I want."
Yeah.
And they were just the best of certain records. But I'm not, I had swinging stuff, and I find a lot of the beginners, my favorite saying, I think, was Duke Ellington, that said, "It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing." And that's my code.
That's right. So, do you download music? Like purchase a record and then download it onto your computer? Do you do that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But normally, yeah, it's just simple.
Right, right, right.
That's my download.
Right.
I'm a basic klutz in technology, so I gotta.
Well, that's pretty good because a lot of people have not crossed that line, but that's the only way to get it anymore. Let me ask you this: what's your favorite venue in the world?
the cruise ship. The reason being, they have about 6 venues going at all time. So, and they've got 2 that'll seat 1,500, 2,000. And then you've got several smaller. So you might catch Jeff Hamilton up here in a 500 seat deal. And then the big band, he'd be in that too. But you've got, there's one where Jeff played. It's a very crowded bar. It's had probably 200 people, and a lot of them standing around the bar, and the rest were seated. And Jeff was with Tamara Hendeman, and his bass player, this is just 2 years ago, I think, but he'd holler back, "You got a big, tall guy that plays the bass back there?" And it was John Clayton, of course. They always go where the other guy's playing. And he came up, and then it was a masterpiece.
Yeah.
But the fact is, actually, the drummer from Michigan graduated last year and was hired by John Clayton. And I saw them on the daytime 2 o'clock set. And I sat next to Bill Cunliffe, who was a great pianist from Philadelphia and had been here in the guest house and the various venues here. And they took a break, and John was still standing there with his bass, and Jeff always goes to check out drummers because he is the ultimate drummer. And he just got up from his seat in the back, and he walked up because the drummer seat was now empty from the Michigan grad, and that's who he wanted to see him. And so he had no sticks or brushes, just hands. And John was sitting there, standing, and Jeff started with his hands, and they'd play melodies. And John, it was a twosome with no instruments. And that was one of the most impressive talent things that I've ever seen.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, the spontaneity.
Yeah.
Those are magical moments for sure. Okay, how about this one? What's the first jazz record you ever bought?
I don't know. It would have been something that my mother probably had, which is, she had both classical and more of the classic jazz. But as a kid, going with her to a party, and I'd always say, somebody would say, "What about requests?" And I'm little Don sitting there says, "How about Kitten on the Keys?" That's just that's a buster. And then how about Nola? That's another one. And I knew those and I liked them. But she'd play all that very well.
Oh, that's great. How about this question? Have you ever beat Ray Brown in golf?
No, because we had a solid program for them. Each one plays with the other 3 in turn, and you're playing for $1. So the whole deal. And Ray, you didn't want him behind when coming in on the 4th 9. His hands, if he has $1 and had to make 3 changes to get to the door out there, he could somehow do it. Those hands are magic. 'Cause think of what he's been doing.
Yeah, right.
And when he'd win, he'd yelp and jump up and down, and That's golf for a buck.
Oh, fantastic. Um, did you ever see Art Tatum live?
Once, I think. Yeah. I think it was at a big downtown Detroit thing.
Let's see. Are there things about jazz that you don't like?
Yeah. New bands that are overdoing the sax and the brass share, and lack of swing. There's a young woman that used our apartment and practiced, and she's now playing. And I'd say, I was in the next door room, which is my office. Well, what do you think? I said, when are you going to start swinging it?
Yeah, I got that. How about this question? Thinking about the business world and the correlation about, you digging in for long term and not the quick sell, and thinking about how that works in music as well. Any thoughts
I
about
would think
that?
so. It's just good, solid thinking. I'm sure the big time composers don't mind that we're still playing for 20 years their songs.
Yeah, for sure. Who's your favorite big band?
The last of the jazz crews, these are all band leaders that are put together with about 30, and every one of them is a star. They have the greatest musician in the world is the fellow that plays every instrument, horns, and he keeps doing it one in the same song and band. And now that John is directing them, I would go down for lunch at a little bitty, like a cafeteria, had a couple things. That's all I wanted, because I didn't want to take much time off from the music. And I'd sit down to have my sandwich, and John Clayton would walk by and he says, "Hi, Don." And they must rehearse until right that minute, and then they do another rehearsal. There's probably 2,500 to 3,000 people on the boat. They're all big names too.
Right, right. Who is your favorite jazz discovery? Because you have really helped a lot of people.
It might be musical theater, because we sponsored a lot of students. Mary Michael Patterson has been very busy on Broadway, and she's a lot of fun. But we've been doing 4 or 5 students, not a folk, I don't want to mislead, but a partial scholarship, $5,000 a year for 4 or 5 students every year. And now we've got music and then jazz on the side with that same thing. And I just got a letter from Tess. This thing that we tried 2 years ago, 6 kids come for a week, and they're on a little scholarship, and they get an automatic invitation to Michigan's music department. And 3 of them they left to go someplace else, and now they're coming back because this program is so good. That just came in today.
Fantastic. Well, Don, that's like the end of my 20 questions, but
Okay.
I'm really delighted to be in your company, because ever since I've known you, you just have such a passion for music, and it's like you're a big kid when you talk about music, when you're around music, and it's just, as a musician, we really feel that. And over the years, just I'm going to speak for everybody in our community. We are so grateful to have you as a mentor, and such a generous soul. And I'm really happy that you were willing to take part in this little conversation.
It's just a little tete-a-tete.
There's a couple things, if you want to just tell us about the books, and we can take some pictures and put that up later.
It was Carl Malcolm's wife, who we knew well, and she's the one that had the land where Tea and Ski went. And we went into her house sometime. We were showing her Sloan. And she said, well, where do I sign in? I said, I don't know. Well, why don't you get a book and have it up there? And people will sign, and 30 years from now, you'll really enjoy it. And today I was laughing at some of these. Bill May is a great pianist, and he's from, I think, Columbus, Ohio. And he came up, and he wrote a thank you note, but he is also a writer and a humorist writer. And he left a note. Really enjoyed your place, but when we closed down the last bar, we had 2 or 3 linemen from the team. We invited them up, and they said they wanted to call a couple of girlfriends to come, and then we had somebody else call some girl that works for coming in, and we got them to dance on the piano. And I know you like that piano, and he just made up all this stuff. And one of my favorite vocalists was from California. I just listened to her, and she read them all. And she said, "Well, there's no question that Bill Mays is number 1 in the thank you notes." He was very, very humorous.
Well, Don, thanks so much. We appreciate it, and thanks so much for tuning in. And in lieu of what's happening with COVID these days, and we can't be at the concert house putting on a show, maybe you'll contribute as part of watching this as a ticket price, and keeping all the arts flowing here from the Kerrytown Concert House. All right. Thanks. We'll see you, everybody.
Thank you for joining us for Live at the 415 at Kerrytown Concert House. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter to read about our scheduled concerts, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to be notified about our newest videos and upcoming live streams. Hope you'll join us again soon.